He was rich enough to buy anything, except someone who remembered his birthday. The dining table sparkled with crystal and silver, but not a single chair was filled. Every year since she died, he lit a candle and watched it burn down in silence. Ethan Caldwell turned 50 in a house full of everything, except life. No calls, no messages, just the wind tapping like a ghost too tired to haunt. He lifted his glass alone and saw his reflection flicker in the untouched cake. Then, from the top of the stairs, a small voice asked, "Daddy, can I find you a mommy?" He smiled, the kind of smile that tried to remember happiness. He didn't know that one small question would change everything. But that one question would change everything. For him, and for the woman who no longer believed in happy endings. Do you think love can truly heal a broken heart? Stay with this story until the end. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe and follow this journey. Ethan loosened his tie. The silk slipped through his fingers like a memory he didn't want to keep. He hadn't blown out a candle since the year she died. The room smelled the same as that night: lemon polish, faint perfume, and loss. Soft footsteps echoed from the stairs. Lila appeared in her pajamas, hair a tangle of gold. She rubbed her eyes, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, did you forget your birthday again?" she asked, voice small but knowing. He smiled, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess I did." "You always do?" she said. "Mommy used to make cake." Her words hit like a whisper of ghosts. He cleared his throat, nodding. "Yeah, she did." Lila climbed onto the chair beside him. The table looked too big for both of them. "You didn't even eat your dinner," she said. "Didn't feel like it tonight." She frowned. "Then make a wish anyway." He looked at the candle stump, burned to nothing. "What would I wish for, sweetheart?" She smiled softly. "For someone to remember next time." He reached for her hand. It was small, warm, alive, and for a moment, the house didn't feel so empty. Lila tilted her head. "You didn't get any presents?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Just seeing you is the best gift." She squinted. "That's what people say when they didn't get anything." He laughed, a quiet sound that cracked in the middle. It startled even him. "You caught me," he said, ruffling her curls. For the first time all evening, the room breathed. The chandelier's light felt less heavy, the air less hollow. Lila leaned her chin on the table. "Daddy, maybe you need a mommy." The words landed sharp and innocent. He blinked, unsure how to answer. "Why do you say that?" "Because you look sad all the time," she said. "And because I miss hugs that smell like cookies." Ethan exhaled slowly. "It's not easy, Lila." She shrugged. "You always say things are hard, but sometimes easy things help more." He looked at her, struck by the truth only children dare to speak. Somewhere in that small voice, grief turned into something else, hope with messy edges. Lila swung her legs under the chair. "I met someone today," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Who's that?" "Her name's Amara. She was sitting on a bench in the park." Ethan straightened. "You talked to a stranger?" "She wasn't scary," Lila said quickly. "She looked sad but smiled when I hugged her." He sighed, half stern, half curious. "You shouldn't walk up to people you don't know." But she wasn't like others. She listened. Silence hung between them, the kind that carries both fear and longing. "She said she didn't have a job," Lila added. "Maybe she's lonely too." Ethan looked at his daughter, so certain, so unfiltered. "What did you tell her?" he asked. Lila smiled proudly. "I said, 'My daddy is so lonely. Can you be my mommy at his birthday party?'" He froze. The room tilted. "Lila?" "I just wanted you to be happy," she said quickly. "She made me feel warm, like when Mommy brushed my hair." Ethan leaned back, heart aching and awake. Somehow, his daughter had spoken the words he never could. Amara Bennett sat on a park bench, the last of the sunlight slipping through the oaks. A paper cup of cold coffee rested beside her. She replayed the little girl's voice in her head. "My daddy is so lonely. Can you be my mommy?" It had been years since anyone had said something that pure. The innocence stung, and before she knew it, she laughed through quiet tears. That tiny stranger had seen her. Not the jobless teacher, not the woman who lost her way, but the person still hoping for something good. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "This is Ethan Caldwell. My daughter met you today at Forsyth Park. I'd like to talk." She froze, heart thudding. Then another message came. "Would you come to a small birthday gathering tomorrow? For Lila's sake. She hasn't stopped talking about you." Amara stared at the screen, the words glowing like a dare. The wind stirred, brushing her face, carrying a hint of jasmine. Maybe it was madness, maybe mercy. "Either way," she whispered, "yes." Hours later, Ethan's phone buzzed on his desk, lighting up the dark study. He read her message again, the glow of his phone lighting the dim room. He hesitated before typing. "Would you join us tomorrow? For Lila's sake." He stared at the screen, thumb hovering over send. He'd spent years avoiding chances that felt too human. Then, with one quiet exhale, he pressed send. Across town, Amara's phone buzzed again. She read the message twice, maybe 3 times. Her heart beat hard in her chest, the way it used to before first dates that never led anywhere. She typed slowly, erasing twice before settling on, "If it's for her." "Yes." She hit send, then placed the phone face down, like it might burn her if she looked again. In the silence that followed, she felt both foolish and alive. For the first time in months, her pulse matched the rhythm of hope. At that same moment, Ethan's phone lit up again. He saw one word that made him breathe differently. Yes. The echo of it filled the empty house with something new. Not joy yet, but the sound of a door cracking open. The clock on the mantel ticked louder than usual. Ethan still held his phone when Ruth, his longtime housekeeper, appeared at the doorway. "She said yes?" she asked, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. He blinked. "How did you know?" "Because your daughter smiled like sunlight again," Ruth said softly. Ethan leaned against the stair railing, still unsure what to do with this strange warmth in his chest. "Maybe it's just a dinner," he murmured. "Maybe," Ruth said, folding a napkin in her hands. "But sometimes one meal can feed more than hunger." He looked at her, half amused. "You always talk like you know the ending." "I've seen enough beginnings," she replied, eyes kind, "and this one feels different." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression a mix of confusion and quiet relief. "She's coming for Lila." "Then let Lila show her why she should stay," Ruth said. Her words lingered long after she left the room. Ethan looked around the house, once too polished, now suddenly too quiet to bear. Tomorrow, someone new would walk through those doors. For the first time in years, he looked forward to morning. Morning came soft and golden over Charleston. Ethan stood in front of the mirror, straightening his cuffs for the 5th time. It wasn't vanity. It was nerves disguised as preparation. He'd hosted hundreds of business dinners, but never something that mattered this much. Downstairs, caterers moved through Magnolia House. Lila arranged cupcakes on the table with fierce concentration. "No sprinkles," she declared. "She looks like someone who likes calm things." Ethan smiled. "You might be right." Across town, Amara stood in front of her open closet. Dresses hung like old memories. She ran her hand over one, soft blue with fading flowers, and stopped. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She brushed her hair, applied light makeup, and whispered to her reflection, "It's not a date, it's kindness." Still, her hands trembled when she tied her shoes. Ethan exhaled as he set the last plate down. 2 people, miles apart, both pretending not to be afraid of what could happen next. Neither knowing that the other was doing the same. When Amara stepped through the doorway of Magnolia House, the air changed. Lila ran toward her, arms wide. "You came!" she cried, squeezing tight. Amara laughed, warmth flooding through her chest. "Of course I did. I said I would." Ethan turned from across the room. The crowd of polished guests blurred. For a moment all he saw was her. Simple dress, kind eyes, and the quiet way she fit into the noise. "I almost didn't come," she admitted, glancing around. "I'm glad you did," he said, voice low but sure. For a beat, the room faded away. Her presence wasn't loud or showy. It was real. Something about that scared him more than he'd expected. Lila tugged her hand. "Come meet everyone." Amara followed, feeling eyes on her from every direction, but the only gaze that mattered was Ethan's. In a room full of people pretending to belong, two strangers had just found recognition. "Ah, the mystery guest," a voice called behind them. Amara turned to see an elegant woman in pearls and poise, Margaret Caldwell. Ethan's posture stiffened. "Mother," Margaret smiled thinly. "So, this is the woman who made quite an impression on my granddaughter." Amara extended a polite hand. "Amara Bennett." "Of course," Margaret said, her tone light but eyes sharp. "How refreshing." The air tightened. Guests glanced, pretending not to. Ethan stepped in quickly. "Mom, excuse us." He guided Amara toward the garden, away from the chandelier glow and polite judgment. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make this awkward." Amara shook her head. "You didn't. Life already did." They stood beneath the magnolia trees, their white petals falling like snow. For the first time, the silence between them didn't feel empty. It felt like the start of something they both had been too afraid to name. They walked through the garden, quiet except for the whisper of magnolia petals drifting in the wind. Amara glanced at Ethan. "Why did you invite me?" He hesitated, eyes on the fountain where Lila had once played. "Because you made my daughter feel safe," he said simply. The honesty in his voice stopped her. No charm, no pretense, just truth. "Safe is rare," she murmured, "even for grown-ups." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I noticed." The silence between them shifted. No longer awkward, just fragile. Amara looked up at the night sky, the soft hum of jazz spilling faintly from the patio. "You have a beautiful home," she said. He shook his head. "It's just a house. Tonight's the first time it's felt alive." A gust of wind sent magnolia petals swirling around them. Neither moved. The air held something they couldn't name yet, a pulse, a beginning. When their eyes met again, it wasn't about grief anymore. It was about recognition. Two people who hadn't expected to be seen suddenly were. When the guests were gone and the lights dimmed, Ethan stood by the staircase, phone in hand. He typed, deleted, then typed again. "Thank you for coming." He hit send before he could overthink it. Across town, Amara slipped off her shoes and sat on her small sofa, the quiet pressing close around her. Her phone buzzed. She read his message and smiled to herself. "You're welcome," she whispered into the empty room, though she didn't text it back. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping softly against the window. Ethan stood at his study window, staring at the reflection of himself. Tie loosened, eyes tired, but lighter somehow. His phone screen glowed in the dark. He smiled the same smile she did, a quiet one that asked for nothing, just acknowledged something real. For the first time in years, both of them ended the night not with silence, but with warmth. Sometimes connection doesn't start with words, just the courage to send one. The next morning, Ethan sat in his office, staring at his calendar filled with meetings that suddenly felt meaningless. He opened his contacts and scrolled to her name. His thumb hovered, then he pressed call. Amara answered softly, cautious. "Mr. Caldwell?" "Ethan," he corrected. "I was wondering, would you help with Lila for a few weeks? Her school's under repair. She adores you." Amara froze. "That's not a good idea." He leaned back in his chair. "Everything worth it rarely is." Her breath caught. "You don't even know me." "I know Lila feels safe with you. That's enough for now." Silence stretched, filled with uncertainty and a flicker of something tender. "I'll think about it," she said at last. "Fair enough," he replied. When the call ended, neither could focus on anything else. Ethan stared at the ceiling, a strange hope rising. Amara stared at her phone, heart racing, knowing she'd already made her choice. She just hadn't said it yet. The next morning smelled of pancakes and sunlight. Maya stood barefoot at the stove while Lila sat on a stool, drawing shapes in syrup. 2 pancakes, 3 chocolate chips, my magic number, Lila said proudly. Amara smiled. 2 for happy, 3 for sweet? Exactly! Ethan appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching the scene quietly. The laughter, the scent of butter, the sound of belonging, things his house hadn't heard in years. You're up early, Amara said without turning. Couldn't sleep, he replied. Too much gratitude. She glanced over her shoulder, smiling faintly. That's a nice problem to have. They shared a small silence that felt like a breath held too long, finally released. Lila pointed at Ethan. Daddy, you're smiling weird. He laughed. Guess I forgot how. In that ordinary kitchen, something extraordinary happened. The sound of a home remembering itself. The greenhouse glowed under the soft afternoon sun. Rows of lemon trees stretched toward the glass ceiling. Amara ran her fingers over a leaf. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ethan stood beside her. My wife never liked this place. Said it made her sneeze. Amara smiled gently. Then I'll keep it alive for her. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither looked away. The warmth in the air deepened. The door creaked open behind them. Margaret Caldwell entered, her heels clicking against the stone floor. So, this is where you've been hiding, she said lightly. Ethan straightened. Mother. Margaret's gaze shifted to Amara. Be careful, dear. Sacred things break hardest. Amara held her ground. Maybe some things are meant to grow back stronger. Margaret studied her, unreadable. Then she turned and left, her perfume lingering. When the door shut, Amara exhaled. Ethan smiled faintly. You handled her better than I ever have. She looked up at him. I've had practice with storms. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, quiet, but coming. That night, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of rain on glass. Ethan sat at the piano, fingers resting on the keys. He played a slow, uncertain melody, one that never seemed to end. Amara stood in the doorway, drawn by the sound. You play beautifully, she said. He didn't turn. I play when I can't sleep. Does it help? He finally looked at her, eyes tired but alive. Not until tonight. She smiled faintly, moving closer. The notes filled the air like whispered confessions. You must miss her, Amara said softly. I do, he admitted, but the music doesn't hurt as much when someone's listening. The rain deepened outside, the rhythm matching the quiet between them. Amara leaned against the piano, close enough to feel his warmth. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the melody, slow, hesitant, healing, carried the moment forward. When he stopped playing, she didn't leave. She just stood there, breathing in the sound of something fragile being repaired. Neither of them knew that peace would last only one night. Later that night, a small cry echoed down the hall. Daddy! Lila whimpered, voice trembling. Ethan hurried to her room, Amara following close behind. Lila sat up, tears wet on her cheeks. Mommy left again, she sobbed. Amara sat beside her, gathering her into her arms. Shh. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. Her voice was low, calm, the kind that quiets storms. She hummed a tune. Something soft, something safe. Ethan stood at the doorway, frozen. He'd forgotten what that sound felt like. Lila's crying slowed. Her small hand clutched Amara's sleeve until sleep found her again. Amara brushed a strand of hair from the child's face, then looked up. Their eyes met in the dim light. Ethan's throat tightened. A single tear escaped before he could stop it. He turned away quickly, pretending it was dust, but Amara saw. For the first time since his wife's death, Ethan didn't feel alone in the pain. Someone else was carrying it, gently, willingly. The next morning broke with sunlight and the smell of coffee. Amara stood at the counter, stirring milk into Lila's cup. The girl hummed happily, a new song she made up in her dream. Then the doorbell rang. Ethan frowned, wiping his hands as he walked to answer. When he opened the door, the past stepped in. Serena Blake stood there. Elegant, sharp, too calm. Ethan, she said softly, I just wanted to see her. His grip on the door tightened. Now's not a good time. It never is, she replied, looking past him into the house. Is that her laugh? Amara appeared behind him, unaware. Serena's eyes flicked to her, recognition sharp and cold. So, Serena said, her smile brittle, you found a replacement. Ethan's jaw set. You should go. But she didn't move. Tell Lila her mother came to visit, she said, stepping back into the morning light. When the door closed, the house felt smaller, and something heavy returned. Serena came back the next day unannounced. She entered with perfume and power, her heels echoing against marble. Amara was in the living room, reading with Lila. The help has a name? Serena said, her voice smooth as glass. Amara stood slowly. Amara Bennett. Ethan walked in just then, expression hardening. She's more than that, he said, stepping closer to Amara. She's here because you weren't. Serena's eyes flashed. You don't get to say that. I already did, Ethan replied. The air crackled. Lila looked between them, confused and frightened. Mara reached for the child's hand. Sweetheart, why don't you check on Ruth in the kitchen? Lila nodded, leaving quietly. Serena turned back to Ethan. You think you can erase me? No, he said, but I won't let you rewrite what you abandoned. For a moment, neither breathed. When Serena finally left, her perfume lingered. Cold, expensive, suffocating. The silence after Serena's departure was thick, almost physical. Amara stood near the window, watching the wind move through the magnolias outside. She's not just visiting, she said quietly. Ethan joined her, jaw tense. I know. Their reflections met in the glass, two people carrying the same storm. She wants Lila back, Amara whispered. She's never wanted responsibility, he said. Just control. Amara nodded slowly. Then we'll need to be ready. He turned toward her, eyes weary but resolute. We? She met his gaze. You're not doing this alone. The words settled between them like an anchor. Outside, thunder rolled again. Not threatening, but inevitable. Ethan exhaled. Thank you. Amara looked back at the trees. Don't thank me yet. The hardest part's coming. They stood side by side, silent but certain. The kind of silence that meant trust, and the promise that when the storm returned, neither of them would face it alone. Days passed in uneasy calm. Then, one morning, the mail arrived, and with it, the storm they feared. A week later, a thick envelope arrived at Magnolia House. Inside was a petition. Serena Blake was filing for full custody of Lila. Ethan read it twice, the words blurring. She's really doing this, he said quietly. Amara's hands shook as she took the papers. She wants to take her back. Days later, a social worker arrived. Clipboard, questions, polite eyes that missed nothing. She walked through the rooms, noting details. Lila's drawings on the fridge, the photo of Ethan, Amara, and the little girl smiling together. Finally, she turned to Amara. And you, Miss Bennett, what are you to the child? Amara paused. Her throat tightened, but her voice didn't waver. I'm the one who stayed, she said. The woman froze, pen still in hand. Ethan looked at Amara, proud, shaken, and quietly undone. In that moment, no document could define love better than the truth that just filled the room. When the door closed behind the social worker, Amara exhaled. Ethan whispered, You didn't have to say that. Yes, she said softly, I did. By morning, the story had spread. Billionaire's ex-wife fights to reclaim her daughter. Cameras gathered at the gates. Headlines called it scandal. Inside, Lila sat on the floor with her coloring book. She looked up at Amara. Do I have to choose, Miss Amara? Amara knelt beside her. Choose what, sweetheart? Who I love more. The question cracked something deep inside her. Amara brushed Lila's hair back gently. No, baby, she whispered. You don't choose who to love. You just get to be loved. Lila's lip trembled. Even if Mommy comes back? Especially then, Amara said. Ethan stood in the doorway, unseen. Her words hit him harder than any court filing. He watched as Lila climbed into Amara's lap, resting her head against her chest. Outside, the press shouted for quotes, headlines, anything. Inside, love spoke in whispers too pure to sell. Sometimes, truth doesn't need to be loud, just said at the right time by the right heart. The courtroom smelled of paper and tension. Reporters filled the benches. Serena sat across the aisle, perfect posture hiding her fear. Ethan's lawyer spoke first, calm but firm. This isn't about money. It's about what's best for the child. Then it was Amara's turn. She rose slowly, palms trembling. The judge looked at her. You are not family by law. Why should we consider your role? She took a breath. Because love isn't proven by coming back. It's proven by staying. The room fell silent. Serena's eyes flickered, and for a moment even she couldn't meet Amara's gaze. Ethan closed his eyes, relief and pride washing through him. Amara continued, voice steadier. I don't want to replace her mother. I just want to be here. Every day she needs someone. The judge nodded slowly, the silence heavy and human. When she sat down, Ethan reached for her hand under the table. She didn't look at him, but she didn't pull away either. 2 hands, 1 quiet promise. Whatever happens, we stay. The verdict came 3 days later. Ethan stood in the same courtroom, fingers clasped tightly in front of him. The judge read the decision. Full custody remains with Ethan Caldwell. Ms. Amara Bennett will be granted legal guardianship of Lila Caldwell. Lila gasped, eyes wide. So you're my mommy now? Amara knelt to her level, tears already spilling. Forever and ever. The little girl threw her arms around her neck. Ethan turned away for a moment, unable to hide his emotion. Applause broke softly in the back, not from lawyers or press, but from relief itself. Serena rose quietly, her face unreadable. She looked at Amara, then at her daughter, and left without a word. The judge's gavel fell one last time. But for the 3 of them, it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, sealed not by law, but by love that refused to let go. A week later, Magnolia House opened its doors again, this time not for a party, but for a promise. Lila ran through the garden, ribbons in her hair. Ethan watched from the porch, his hand resting on Amara's back. Margaret Caldwell approached slowly, her usual grace softened by something new. She reached out, taking Amara's hands in hers. You made us whole again, she said simply. Amara's eyes filled. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell. Margaret shook her head. Call me Margaret. You've earned it. Ethan smiled quietly. Told you she'd come around. Amara laughed softly. Guess miracles take time. Under the magnolia tree, the 3 generations stood together. The grandmother who once resisted, the woman who healed, and the child who began it all. The petals above trembled in the wind, falling like blessings. And, for the first time, Magnolia House didn't feel haunted by memory. It felt alive with love. The garden was quiet that afternoon. Amara was watering the small orange saplings when she heard footsteps behind her. It was Serena. No cameras, no perfume, just a woman standing with her hands clasped too tightly. I thought I'd hate you, Serena said, voice low. But you're what she needed. Amara set down the watering can, surprised. She's your daughter. You'll always be part of her. Serena nodded, eyes glossy. I wanted to come back and fix things, but she looks at you the way I always wanted her to look at me. Amara took a slow breath. Then love her with honesty, not guilt. Serena blinked, silent for a moment. You're a good woman. Amara smiled softly. No, just a woman who decided to stay. They stood together beneath the magnolia branches, neither needing forgiveness, only truth. Serena turned to leave, lighter somehow. Take care of her. Amara nodded. Always. When she was gone, Amara looked toward the house. Laughter floated through an open window. Lila's laughter. The sound meant healing for them both. That evening, the sun melted into gold behind the trees. Ethan waited by the porch steps, holding something small in his hand. Amara joined him, brushing soil from her skirt. "You keep looking at the ring like it might disappear," he said, teasing gently. She smiled, "Just making sure it's real." "It is," he said, slipping the ring onto her finger. "We are." She stared at the band. Simple, elegant, nothing loud. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Not perfect," Ethan replied, "but honest." He took her hands, thumb tracing her knuckles. "We've both lost enough. Let's stop living like love's a gamble." Her eyes glistened. "You're sure?" "I've never been more." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Not empty this time, but full. Somewhere inside, Lila shouted for dinner. They laughed together, the sound steady and bright. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel like he was starting over. He felt like he was finally home. A week later, Magnolia Garden came alive again. The family gathered under a soft canopy of white blooms. No photographers, no guests, just love. Lila wore a dress covered in daisies, twirling in circles until she fell laughing onto the grass. She looked up at Ethan and Amara, who stood hand in hand. "This is where I found my mommy," she said proudly. Amara knelt down, smiling through tears. "You sure did, sweetheart." Ethan ruffled her hair. "And I found both of you." Margaret watched from the porch, her eyes soft. "Looks like my boys finally did something right," she said quietly to Ruth, who chuckled. The magnolia petals drifted down, landing in Lila's hair. She giggled and held one out. "For luck," she said. Amara tucked it behind her ear. "Then we'll never run out." For once, time didn't feel like something that slipped away. It felt like something being built, moment by moment, together. That evening, the three of them stood in the garden with a small orange sapling. Ethan dug the first hole, hands in the dirt. "Roots take time," he said, glancing at Lila. She nodded solemnly. "Then let's plant deep." Amara smiled, guiding Lila's small hands over the soil. The scent of fresh earth filled the air, grounding and pure. Ethan pressed the dirt down gently, his hand overlapping hers. For a while, none of them spoke. The sun dipped lower, painting their faces in amber light. When it was done, Lila whispered, "Do trees ever get lonely?" Amara brushed a curl from her cheek. "Not when they grow close together." Ethan looked at the sapling, then at them. His family. The kind of family built, not inherited. The kind that survives storms because its roots choose to hold on. Behind them, the house stood quiet, glowing. Magnolia House was no longer just a place. It was theirs. Later that night, when the world had gone still, Ethan sat on the porch with Amara's head resting on his shoulder. Lila slept inside, clutching her stuffed rabbit, safe at last. The crickets sang, and the magnolias swayed like old friends keeping watch. He looked out at the garden, at the sapling, the flowers, the life he never thought he'd find again. He smiled softly. He had money, fame, and everything that glitters. But only when love walked in did life finally feel alive. Amara lifted her head. "What was that?" "Just something I needed to say out loud." She reached for his hand. "Then don't ever stop saying it." They sat in silence, the kind that feels like peace. The moonlight touched their faces, gentle as forgiveness. If this story touched your heart, share it. Someone out there still believes in second beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, this is how one truly starts again.